welcome into Fantasy Focus Football. It is Friday, September 8th. I am joined by Field Yates and Mike Clay. My name is Daniel Dopp. Today's show is presented by Geico. Switch to Geico, see all the ways that you could save. We are ready to preview week one of the NFL on today's show.
Incorrect. We are not. Because before we can preview week one, we need to go ahead and crown the Detroit Lions Super Bowl champions, baby.
First place.
I feel a little bit of this is you trying to earn your way back into my good graces after not taking the Lions on the show yesterday.
Wait a minute. I tuned into the show yesterday, and you said I picked the Lions, so I'm standing by that.
That's
a nice job, Mike.
Yeah,
Congrats to you.
I nailed
you
that.
Knew it the entire time.
Really
That's right. I mean, you crushed it, so thank you for that.
I'll tell you what, I'm going to say this really quickly. I think this is the biggest Lions victory in the history of my life. I'm not going to be honest. Or I'm not going to lie about this. I think that when I think about what this Detroit Lions team has looked like and how bad we have been for decade upon decade, in spite of the fact that we had great talent and Barry Sanders and Matthew Stafford and Calvin Johnson, we have never had, I feel like, a career franchise-defining win like we had here in week one at Arrowhead Stadium, taking down Patrick Mahomes.
Let's go. But I have a question for you guys. Now, let's spin to the opposite side of the spectrum. If the season ended today, and we're close to it being over,
Chiefs would be last place.
They would have the first pick in the 2024 NFL draft.
Wow. What are they going to do there?
Do they take Caleb Williams and trade Patrick Mahomes? Imagine if you could parlay Patrick Mahomes into like 2/3 and a 7th next draft.
That's
Would you do that to the Bucs?
You got to think about it. You got to think about it. Look, they clearly had some wide receiver issues last night. So
oh, yes, they did.
Maybe they could trade down like a spot and take Marvin Harrison Jr.
Oh, that's an idea. And pair him with Patrick Mahomes.
That sounds like a plan, actually.
Right. Patrick Mahomes' job remains secure.
Oh, my gosh.
Should we talk about it, though? 21-20. Win for your boys.
Unbelievable game last night. I want to say this really quickly, not fantasy related, but Aiden Hutchinson in his second year looked fantastic, even though Juwan Taylor was cheating all night long.
Wow. Technically, no.
Technically, no. I don't know. We'll see about that one.
Like they called him out of finally, like at the end of the game when it was all on the line.
Yeah, literally, technically not. I mean, by the book, he was doing things that were within his parameters. It was just one of those rules that not a lot of us are familiar with, and there's no worse time to to walk right to the boundary of a rule than Thursday night football in week one, because everybody's watching the game. So that was what happened last night with Juwan Taylor. You want to dive into some fantasy takeaways?
Yeah, let's talk about a couple of things. I think the Detroit Lions are basically on their way to winning this Trophy Smack belt, though, Field. If you want to go and be like the Detroit Lions, head on over to TrophySmack.com. You can grab this belt for 10% off. Use the code FOCUSBELT.
Okay.
The Detroit Lions, though, last night looked fantastic, I feel like, on offense in their win. Couple things I want to talk about. Amon-Ra St. Brown looked like Amon-Ra St. Brown. Don't really need to go into a whole lot there. This Lions running back room. We saw a heck of a lot of David Montgomery, Field Yates. We are really excited to see what Jahmyr Gibbs could be in this offense, but it looked like week one, they wanted to let David Montgomery get the rock a little bit
21 carries for Montgomery, 7 for Jahmyr Gibbs. Montgomery played nearly 80% of the snaps. Jahmyr Gibbs played under 30% of the snaps.
Don't like that.
Now, however, if you're looking for a silver lining here, first of all, it's week one. A lot of stuff changes from week one to week 2 to week 3, all the way into the middle and the end of the season. Moreover, it did sort of remind us of what the preseason focus was that David Montgomery, even with a significant role, he had to play nearly 80% of the snaps and handle 21 carries and score a touchdown to get you 13.4 fantasy points, because he was a literal 0 in the passing game last night. So Montgomery was sort of the ideal RB2 target for those that want hero RB or maybe a 0 RB target. Meanwhile, Jahmyr Gibbs looked good in the passing game, didn't play all that much, Mike, but we think there's a chance that he starts to play more and more, perhaps as soon as next week.
Yeah. I think this might be the widest ratio we see this season. I think maybe the time it might not be is if they're just blowing someone out right out of the gate.
Sure.
They want to run Montgomery between the tackles, but I mean, the gap's going to get closer. Now's the chance. Look, if someone in your league is panicking, a lot of people are panicking right now, you have to go after Gibbs right now. He was drafted in the middle of the first round of the draft. He looked like the better player. He was terrific. He's good in the passing game.
Explosiveness.
He's so fast.
The offense is good. The offensive line is great. All the things we loved about him in the offseason are still true about Jahmyr Gibbs. And there was reports that he would be brought on slowly anyway. So this isn't a total shock at all. I expect better days ahead. Yeah, I mean, if you get a window to get him on your team, now you do it.
Almost got in the end zone. Honestly, he tripped up there inside the 10-yard line. He had a shot to be able to get in the end zone. Amon-Ra ended up scoring there. But let's move ahead and talk about the Chiefs, because I think this is really where the big conversation is at. We thought without Travis Kelce being there for Patrick Mahomes, one of these other pass catchers was going to step up, Mike. And we didn't really see a pass catcher step up in that stead.
Tell me about Skyy Moore.
MVS had a nice catch at one point.
He did, yeah, he did.
Justin Watson did.
Skyy Moore
all
and
people
Kadarius.
we started, right?
Yeah. Right, of course, yeah.
Skyy Moore was the guy that we were all in on. He was the one that we were talking about. Very disappointing. Kadarius Toney also disappointing. But let's start with Skyy Moore.
I'll talk about Toney after you're done with. You go Skyy Moore first.
The good news about Skyy Moore is he played 69% of the snaps, which was the highest among all of the wide receivers. The bad news is he had 3 targets and did not catch any of them last night. So this is what I would say about Skyy Moore. Just hold tight. Like you're not going to want to put him in your lineup necessarily next week, but he should stay on your bench for now. Don't panic. He did still play most of the snaps at wide receiver. That's a good sign moving forward. They're going to use a lot of guys. Yeah. It's going to be up and down. It's going to be a little boom bust. But we saw that last year with Juju Smith-Schuster, who ended up serviceable at times. So I would say hold tight for now.
My mic's a little like this. It's a little awkward right now. Bear with me. I'm for Kadarius Toney.
Oh, so drop that one. That was a drop there.
Just dropped.
Sorry.
My mic.
Is it working?
Catch the football. It might not be working anymore, but catch the football, Kadarius. Oh, my goodness gracious. Kadarius Toney, man. Wow. Here's what I'll say. The next time someone says something to the effect of, like, he's so tantalizing, he's got as much talent as anybody in the NFL, just tell them, no, he doesn't. No. And when Kadarius Toney starts to be consistent, we can come back and revisit this conversation. But until he shows that, he should not be in your lineup. As cool as he might seem when you watch his YouTube highlights, it just has not come together for Kadarius Toney. So right now, Skyy Moore remains the Chiefs wide receiver you want to honor.
By the way, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He was 6th in line at wide receiver in snaps for them last night. To only play 26% of the snaps. Another reason to keep him out of your lineup.
If I broke that microphone because I dropped it, ESPN can bill me.
Worth it?
We got Totally worth it. I probably moved a little early on that play anyways, Field. No big deal.
Wow.
That's all right.
Last thing here. Chiefs backfield. I thought that Isaiah Pacheco, I was encouraged by 4 catches last night.
Yes.
And designed plays. These were not dump offs by Patrick Mahomes. I thought he got a little bit less rushing utilization than I expected, but I think he kind of settled into what I had as a forecast for him coming into this year. Like a low-end RB2 in a 12-team league, a better flex play than RB2 play.
Yeah, and CH got the start. That should not be surprising. That was the expectation because Pacheco was hurt and missed so much time in the offseason, and then quickly Pacheco showed why he took the job last year. The same reason he took the job last night. He's the better running back. But you're right. That was huge. The 4 targets. Something to keep an eye on. If he keeps that up, this could be an every week RB2.
Please come back, Travis Kelce. Sounds like he'll be back next week, by the way, which is good. 10 days between last night and their week 2 matchup with the Jaguars. We expect him on the field for week 2.
Patrick Mahomes is still unbelievable, even without Travis Kelce out there. But like this offense absolutely needs Kelce to be able to be there with everyone.
By the way, Patrick Mahomes deserves 2 points back. Kadarius Toney deserves 2 fewer points because that was not a Patrick Mahomes pick 6.
Dude, that Brian Branch pick 6. How many rookies get a pick 6 against Patrick Mahomes in their first game ever? Like, what an unbelievable night for Brian Branch.
Yeah, the first player, any rookie, to return an interception for a touchdown in his first game since Mike Hughes back in 2018.
Not to mention Rice for Kansas City, his first game. Even he was a backup wide receiver in this game.
Yeah, he had 4 catches on 12 routes or something like that.
He did, but he scored a touchdown too in his
first
NFL game as well.
He was mentioned last week on the podcast.
Yeah.
All right, Field Yates, Mike Clay. My name is Daniel Dopp here on Fantasy Focus. We're doing our Week 1 preview, diving in with some of the biggest topics of the week. We're going to start with the Rams. Cooper Kupp officially ruled out for Week 1, Field Yates, which is tough because when I look at these Rams pass catchers, I don't have a ton of confidence in anyone not named Cooper Kupp on this roster. If there was someone that you were going to look at, is there a pass catcher that you would consider starting here in Week 1?
I expect that Tyler Higbee has a very good shot of leading this team in targets this upcoming Sunday against the Seahawks, who, by the way, have an awesome offense. They could be putting up a bunch of points against this Rams defense. So Higbee, lock him in, tight end starter for me. I've got him as tight end 6 on my board. The next best bet to me would be Van Jefferson, who's this is going to sound crazy because he's still a young player who doesn't have much of a resume, but he's their most accomplished receiver, not named Cooper Kupp. So I get that might be damning with faint praise, but I've got Van Jefferson as I had it written down here, and now I have lost where I had him ranked. But yes, bottom line for me is that Van Jefferson is like mid-tier wide receiver 4 option. Not a lock-it-in starter by any stretch, but for me, the most likely bet to lead the Rams in receiver routes and probably targets as well.
Yeah, Jefferson, a lot of what he did last season was without Matthew Stafford, who missed the second half of the season, but he was still inside the top 50 in fantasy points per game. And now there's no Cooper Kupp here. He's going to see, and he's a vertical threat too. So he's probably the best chance of this group to catch a random longer touchdown or a 45-yard catch, something like that. So I don't feel great about it, but if you need a flex, and maybe you do if you had Cooper Kupp or Jerry Jeudy doesn't play or Terry McLaurin doesn't play or something like that, this is a kind of a desperation option. And by the way, I'm with you on Higbee. 5th in catches at tight end last year, and his target share should be up with Kupp out.
Higbee's the guy I'm looking at here. Ideally, because it's week 1, you should be able to have better options in my mind than Van Jefferson because you don't have guys on buys and whatnot. But if you need him,
I would agree.
Available there.
10-team league, no. 12-team league,
maybe.
If you did not attack that wide receiver spot. But the question you'd be having is like, would you rather roll the dice on like a Zay Flowers in week 1 as opposed to somebody like Van Jefferson, who I think people feel like Flowers is more exciting and has more upside?
Yeah, come on. It's a fun game, right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
it's
more fun.
That's right.
I want Zay.
As we saw last night with a rookie, an exciting rookie, you have to play them because, of course, they're going to have a huge role.
And now we have Bijan Robinson we're going to talk about here.
This one. Yes.
Here's the thing. We just watched. I think you should. We just saw Jahmyr Gibbs not get as many touches as we thought.
I was just going to say, if he plays 27% of the snaps, I mean, first of all, you're going to go through the roof. I know that. First of all, we've talked about this.
We'll be firing people. Not that it's our job to do so.
It's over.
No, in this one, though, like the forecast, like they have been tipping their hand on this one. Like it's going to be the Bijan Robinson show on Sunday and probably the entire season. I just will tell you, the enthusiasm that I continue to hear from Atlanta, and I know he's the 8th overall pick. You should be excited about him. The enthusiasm that I hear has grown throughout the preseason. This guy might already be the best player on this roster, not named Grady Jarrett. He is an absolute freak. He should mash. He should, even if he doesn't have 95% of the running back touches. And Mike has talked about how like Tyler Algier can have, a 30% role.
He can have 10 or 11 carries, and Bijan will be just fine in the 15 to 20 range. So I'm not worried about that at all.
We're not really debating whether or not we're starting Bijan Robinson. I think we're just here to tell you, like, we are also fans too. And when you have the most exciting rookie since Saquon Barkley in 2018, I'm fired up to see how they deploy him because I think it might be, I know the Falcons have earned a reputation over the past couple of seasons of not exactly maximizing these star players. Maybe Bijan just absolutely mashes, not just as a runner, but as a receiver too. And all of a sudden we start to feel better about Arthur Smith and this play calling staff.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm worried about my projection for Bijan in the offseason. I'm worried that like I was too high on the carries, but too low on the targets.
Sure,
like, does he have an Alvin Kamara type
regard?
season? He could have 150 carries this year, which are like, that's not a lot. But if he has 80 catches, he's fine. He's going to be in mid-range at worst RB1. So I'm with you.
But the rest of the players on this offense,
dude,
how are we feeling?
So if I'm looking at these pass catchers, I probably feel a little bit better about deploying Kyle Pitts in the tight end position just because of how thin tight end
You might have a choice.
Right. Rather than Drake London. I mean, so I'm starting. I have Kyle Pitts. I think we all do have Kyle Pitts as a starter at tight end this week, in week 1, taking on the Panthers. I think Drake London is really the question is, are you thinking about him in your flex? I think he's a top 30 wide receiver for all of us, but I don't have great vibes here because in part, like you talked about, I want to see how they're going to use Bijan Robinson. I want to see how they're going to deploy him. And is this going to be a game where they want to see what they got in the rookie? So
what do you think?
That's a tough one for me.
I think he's in my top 30. I'm starting him. He's really talented. And we pick on the Falcons for last year and them not getting the ball in the hands of these guys enough. Part of it was the inaccuracy of the quarterback. Part of it was the low volume passing game. But 56% of their targets, so when they threw the ball, over half the time went to 2 guys.
Yeah.
It was Drake London and Kyle Pitts. Now you're going to add a 3rd guy, but I don't think really anyone else is going to get the ball in the passing game. Maybe here or there for Cordell Patterson, Mac Hollins will get a couple of games. Like, they're going to feature these 3 guys, and I think that'll be enough. And the expectation is they're going to score more points, that this will be a better offense. It was actually more efficient than you realize last season. So I do have some quarterback concerns. I have some volume ceiling concerns, but these 3 guys will be featured. We saw them try to do that last year with 2 guys. Not worried. London should be in lineups.
Yeah, and by the way, London down the stretch, now granted without Kyle Pitts, and yes, it's last year, but when Desmond Ridder took over as a starter, he heavily featured Drake London. Like, there was a saturation of targets. If you go back and look at his last 4 or 5 games of last season, it became the Drake London show in that Falcons passing game. I'm just letting people know that I'm being prepared to be let down over the weekend by Kyle Pitts. You know why? Because I got a lot of scar tissue from last year. You know what? That's just the reality. A lot of scar tissue from last year. So if Kyle Pitts comes out on Sunday and has 2 catches for 17 yards, I'm not going to lie to you guys. I'm not going to be that mad because I prepared myself mentally. I'm doing this for you. Me, man of the people, is just telling you. I've got him as a starting tight end, but if something bad happens on Sunday with a very pedestrian output, just know that I'm here for you, and I prepared you mentally for this moment.
So who's the guy you're not prepared for? Is that Bijan?
In that offense?
Yeah.
So, I mean, you're not prepared to be okay with it. Like, you're going to lose your mind.
If Bijan doesn't have,
I think
between,
that's gotta be
the opposite.
If it's 18, if it's like 12 carries and 2 targets for Bijan, I will be not happy on Monday.
Okay.
We'll hear about it.
Kind of see what that looks like.
Yeah, it's not good.
Yeah,
Not good.
Not fun.
mean mean fighting machine. I can't even speak.
All right, let's move ahead and talk about the Baltimore Ravens. We are really excited. One of the things we've been talking about all offseason long, Todd Monken and this Lamar Jackson-led offense. Mike Clay, Lamar Jackson plays the Houston Texans. Are they a good defense?
Well, it's tricky, right? Last year they were so bad against the run. No one really threw at them.
Right.
Check this out. Last year they allowed the fewest touchdown catches to wide
Wasn't
receivers.
it 4?
6.
Oh, 6.
6. Fourth fewest fantasy points allowed to receivers. I think that would probably shock a lot of people, considering they weren't a very good defense. But people just ran against them, and maybe that's reason to like J.K. Dobbins in this one. But at the same time, their defense is a little different. New scheme, new players. Will Anderson, obviously, a big addition. So I'm not overreacting to this matchup. I view it as a plus matchup to some extent based on the personnel on that side of the ball. Lamar Jackson right now without Mahomes in our rankings is my number 1 quarterback for this week.
Yep.
We talked about Flowers. I want him in my lineup.
Yep.
OBJ's the flex option as well.
If he plays.
If he plays.
OBJ has now been added to the injury report for those that may have missed it. And Mark Andrews, by the way, also on the injury report. He has been limited each of the past 2 days. He missed 6 practices prior to Wednesday's practice, but he said yesterday, like, God willing, I'll be on the field. So I got the sense from his comments he was going to play on Sunday. He's our number 1 tight end with Travis Kelce now removed.
I was just going to say, if you take out Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce, these two Ravens just spot right in. Lamar Jackson is now QB1. Mark Andrews is tight end 1, in part because we think this offense is hopefully going to mash. I'm really excited what it's going to look like. We might see a little less running from Lamar Jackson this year. I think that's a fair thing to think about. But if he's going to throw the ball a little bit more, if we're going to have a little more passing volume, you're still going to be able to have that same kind of fantasy output.
That's what we think, right? Is that like the rushing decrease will be offset by the passing increase, both in terms of efficiency and volume. And so week 1 has a little bit of a what to watch for nature to it, right? Because we're not like evaluating like, hey, last week Lamar didn't do enough of this or did more than enough of that. It's like, hey, we've been spending 6 months talking about this new look Ravens offense. How does it actually look when the games begin on Sunday? But I can't wait to see it because the vibe's extremely high. I also think that J.K. Dobbins has himself a big old day on Sunday. Mike talked about that bad run defense. Moreover, I think that J.K. Dobbins, like over the course of the season, I'm worried about him holding up and also the impact of like Gus Edwards getting some work here or there. Big Sunday for J.K. Dobbins against the Texans.
Interesting. How big do you think?
I don't know. Top 16 running backs sound about right to you?
Nope, sure doesn't. You want to do a board bet on that?
Sure, why not? Let's do it.
What?
Yeah.
You're not buying it?
No, I think J.K. Dobbins will pretty easily be outside the top 20.
Okay, so we would just, where do we split the difference? Top 18?
Sure. Let's say
okay, I say J.K. Dobbins is a top 18 running back in week 1.
I say J.K. Dobbins will not be a top 18 running back in week 1.
Put it on the board.
Nailed it.
That board bet brought to you by Geico, by the way. Switch to Geico and see all the ways that you could save.
All right, let's move ahead. Talk about another rookie. So many rookies that we are excited to be able to see here in week 1.
Yeah.
Field, are you trusting Anthony Richardson to start in your quarterback position in a 10 or 12 team fantasy league?
Not by my rankings.
What? Yeah. Come on. Exciting rookie. Come on. We got to play them all. Let's go.
I know this is our chance. I got him as quarterback 15. So there are people that I think I've seen a couple leagues that I'm in where people did draft Anthony Richardson as their quarterback 1. General sense that I am getting and that I am on board with is a little bit of a wait and see approach here for Anthony Richardson.
Yeah.
Guarantee's going to have a couple plays that are awesome on Sunday. It's going to be the consistency, though, and I'm concerned about the passing efficiency on Sunday as well. The matchup's fine. The Jaguars are not a great defense. I don't have concerns about the Colts like just getting overwhelmed by the personnel, but this is game 1 for a guy who started 13 games in college, completed 53% of his passes, and until the Colts show us that they're willing to unleash him, like Shane Steichen, their head coach, did last year as Jalen Hurts' offensive coordinator in Philadelphia, then I'm not comfortable saying he is a lock-it-in, must-start quarterback.
Yeah, I'm at QB 15. I agree. This is a guy you drafted after you had your starter, most likely. This is just an upside, mid to late round flyer. You're hoping for the best. Maybe it's trade material. Maybe he turns into a star and you could start him at some point, but it's not a guy you drafted to start in week 1. If you did, then that was a bold strategy.
Yeah.
And
I don't think any Colts this week is a lock-it-in starter.
I was just going to say that. I'm not starting any. Are you starting any of the running backs in place of JT?
No, I will let somebody else start, either Deion Jackson or Evan Hull.
Or Zach Moss, who's probably going to play.
If he plays. Yeah, there's a chance he'll play on Sunday after that broken arm. And I've got Michael Pittman as wide receiver 35. I think Mike has been about as much of an advocate against Michael Pittman this offseason. So he hasn't even been higher than I do at wide receiver 32. He'll be the number 1, and the target should be okay. The question is, if he gets 10 targets, will he turn it into 7 catches or turn it into 4 catches?
That 53% completion rate at the college level is what really makes me nervous about Michael Pittman there.
He's going to learn on the fly. It's going to take some time. He might be a superstar, but the passing might take a little time.
Yeah, it might take some time to get there.
All right, we got a little bit more from week 1, but first, Field, help us pay some bills.
Geico asks, I would love a chance to save some money on insurance.
I would.
Of course you would. When it comes to great rates on insurance, Geico can help. Like with insurance for your car, truck, motorcycle, boat, and RV. Even help with homeowners or renters coverage. Plus, add an easy-to-use mobile app, available 24-hour roadside assistance, and more. And Geico is an easy choice. Switch today and see all the ways you could save. It's easy. Simply go to geico.com or contact your local agent today.
All right, I am Daniel Dopp here with Field Jason, Mike Clay on Fantasy Focus, previewing all of week 1. Now we are talking the other side of this Colts game we just touched on, and we are looking at the Jaguars. Trevor Lawrence. Mike, we've talked about this. Guys going from that second to the third year, we're looking for that step. I think Trevor Lawrence is a pretty obvious starter for all of us this week. We kind of had him ranked that way through draft season. Anything you want to talk about? Because for me, it's really about Calvin Ridley.
Ooh, yeah. Do you like fun, Mike?
I love fun.
Okay, good. Just
like
to
my
make sure.
favorite thing.
Yeah, you love fun because you are a big fun guy.
That's right.
Fun people start Calvin Ridley. Not fun people.
Don't start Calvin Ridley. Yep.
Wait a minute. Where Ridley was drafted, no one's benching Calvin Ridley.
No, I'm just saying, but they start him without an ounce of trepidation.
All right.
Yep.
Fair.
So
I was trying to make a thing there, and you just like totally let me down.
You're just like,
not a teammate.
I mean,
be a teammate.
I started Pat Mahomes last night too. I mean,
yeah. Wow. Okay.
Wow.
Look,
So
you draft these guys in the first few rounds, you start them. Yeah, we're starting Trevor Lawrence. We're starting Calvin Ridley.
Oh, I know. The point is that like there was a time this offseason where we did wonder what the role would look like in Jacksonville, but it seems like he has cemented that number 1 standing.
Yeah, I know. I'm with you. You're right. Going into it, I remember you and I, like early pods, I'm going to say like February, March, we were arguing about that. Like, is he going to be the one for sure? Well, Christian Kirk's
that's when you guys were not fun.
Yeah, I guess not.
Wow.
But it took some time, and Ridley, I mean, he asserted himself in training camp and preseason. He looks like the real deal. So, yeah, he's a lineup lock for sure, immediately right out of the gate. And it's a good matchup, too. The Colts traded away Stephon Gilmore. Major questions at cornerback. He's going to have a great matchup. He's going to see a lot of a rookie on one side and a recent undrafted player on the other side. It's set up for Ridley to have a huge debut.
I am so pumped to be able to watch this guy after play football for the first time in a year and a half at like an elite level.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the things I'm most excited about here in week 1. The only thing that bums me out about Calvin Ridley is the fact that, well, hold on.
Oh.
Is the fact that there were some other really good players on this Jaguars offense last year, and someone is going to have to take a hit because we think Calvin Ridley is going to be heavily involved. Field, if you're talking about these guys, I still think Christian Kirk is a potential flex play this week.
I agree.
Same thing with Evan Ingram. He's a starting tight end. Zay Jones, for me, is the guy that kind of falls out of favor here in week 1.
Unfortunately, that's where I have him as well because he is a good player. The guy had over 80 catches last season. He makes $9 million a year. He is not some scrub. That's
he's not.
Third wide receiver. He'll have some games here. I have a little bit of sort of a 49er scent on this offense in some ways with Evan Ingram and Christian Kirk and Zay Jones that like over the course of the year, I think Christian Kirk will have the most of those catches. I also think that it could be like, Christian Kirk had 7 catches in week 1 and 2 in week 2. Zay Jones might not have 4 catches in a game until week 5, and then I'll have like 4 straight games with at least 6 catches, right? Sure. So there's going to be a bit of the unpredictable nature to this offense outside of Trevor Lawrence, Calvin Ridley, and also Travis Etienne. That's a good problem for Jacksonville, though. It's because they have so much talent. They're a legitimate AFC contender this year. But yes, for now, the one Jaguar you feel totally confident in is Calvin Ridley. Evan Ingram gets the nod, and I'm starting him as if I have him on my roster, but that's also just another reflection of how bad the tight end spot is, right? Because the possibility, Mike, of him having look through the first 10 games of last year. The possibility of Evan Ingram having 1 catch on Sunday is in play.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. He had a 4-game stretch where he was the number 1 scoring tight end, or he might have been 2 behind Kelsey. The rest of the year he was like 24th. Yeah, it was something like that.
In play.
But actually, that applies also to Trevor Lawrence in some ways. He was very boom bust last year. He did still finish top 10 in all passing and rushing categories of quarterback, which is why we feel good about him. Now you add Calvin Ridley. Hopefully we get more consistency out of him. But I'm with you. I think that I would put Ingram in the must start, the lineup lock territory. I mean,
he is. Yes, I'm just preparing people. I'm doing
fair enough.
I'm doing the Lord's work today, right? When Kyle Pitts and Evan Ingram don't have great games on Sunday.
That's smart, actually. We should do more of that going into week 1 because everyone overreacts, right?
That's
There's
right.
Panic on Mark Gibbs down, or so I'm with you. That's
my
a
future
smart way to
fantasy
do it.
analysis is going to be like this. Hey,
Take it down a notch.
I'm starting Chris Olave this weekend. I'm just telling you though, because football also is an unpredictable game. He might not have a great game, and if he doesn't, just remember that they have to come back for more next Sunday. How's that for analysis?
Why don't we do this? We'll tape an entire show with like a positive spin on every player, and then do the same show with the negative spin on every player. Then we'll have everything covered.
We have accounted for everything. Covered our ground. Love it.
This is the way to do it.
Yep, let's do it.
Speaking of covering our Browns, you said cover our grounds. I said cover our Browns.
Heyo.
See how I moved that
What a
forward?
superstar.
TV professional.
I did, yeah.
So I don't have that same kind of excitement around this Browns quarterback position that I felt like I was going to have earlier in the offseason. We've heard a lot of stuff about Elijah Moore. Like that's the camp report I've been hearing is everyone loves Elijah Moore. But the question for me has been Deshaun Watson. We've been waiting to see. Struggled last year once he came back, Mike. And now to start the season, I wanted to get some positive camp reports, hearing that Deshaun was out there slinging it to guys. I don't feel like I've been hearing those things.
I haven't been.
And now in week 1, where it's like, are you going to trust him? We drafted him to be your starter. So are you starting him here in week 1?
I am. And I think that happens sometimes. Sometimes actually we overhype certain players. Like, for example, Anthony Richardson, when he was playing against the Eagles third stringers, and he actually didn't play that well, but had a couple of good highlight reel plays and got a lot of hype. Like, here's why I'm not worried about Deshaun Watson. First of all, the last couple weeks last season, he started to show it a little bit. He started to bounce back. He was also top 5 in rushing production at quarterback, which is huge, something that he did a lot in Houston. But also, the Browns, objectively speaking, on paper, the Browns roster is loaded. That is a really good team.
This every year.
Great.
Love them.
I've done it before. I mean, look, the year I was on the most was the year after they lost every game when they went 0-16.
Right, you were in.
And next year they were 500. I said they'd be a 500 team. They were.
Well, no, I'm not holding it against you.
So, but this is the best team I think Cleveland's had in decades. I mean, they're really, really stacked. They're arguably a top 5 team on paper. The O-line is elite. Yeah. They bring in more pass catchers. Elijah Moore, by all accounts, he is the guy getting the hype. They have Njoku. They have Cooper. Peoples-Jones is underrated. I love Cedric Tillman. I mean, Chubb in the backfield. Yeah. I think it sets up well. I'm okay that it was a quiet preseason, and maybe you got him a little cheaper on draft day.
I've got him as quarterback 8 as well. He's in my locks for quarterbacks. The one thing that I think we have to wonder is if, and we talked earlier about how don't overreact to week 1. It's just one game, right? Jahmyr Gibbs will not be playing 27% of the snaps for the entirety of the season, probably not even for the entirety of the month. Is it because of how Deshaun Watson performed last year? I believe that if he does not start strong, next week people will already be saying, you know what? I knew it. This guy just stinks. He's not good anymore. Time for me to pivot to a different quarterback. I'm bracing for that possibility if he struggles out of the gates here. But I do have him as a quarterback 8 on my board, but a starting quarterback this week, even in a not great matchup, because that Cincinnati defense is the real deal.
Yep. Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to seeing do the Browns do what the Titans did last year.
Okay.
In teaching their running back, who is one of the most dominant runners in the game, that you can catch a couple of passes. That's what your hands are for, not just stiff-arming runners, right?
I mean, Nick Chubb's good at catching the ball.
And now that there's no Kareem Hunt there, we think that this might be a possibility. We saw the Titans do it with Derrick Henry, right? If we can get that same type of just a little bit of passing game usage for Nick Chubb, that's something I'm really looking forward to watching in week 1, the way they're going to potentially use him. Field, let's talk about Chris Olave. You're all in on the kid. You've already been talking about how much you love the guy so much. You've got him as a top 10 guy here in week 1.
Yeah, I've got him as wide receiver 9. Mike has him projected for 5 catches and 74 yards without any touchdowns, which is only about like a third of what I have him forecasted for. I'm thinking possible single game receiving record on Sunday.
Yeah. Get him in your DFS lineup.
More seriously, I love Olave this year. I've been talking about it all summer. I think the guy has all the goods to be a special player in this league. Great, a steady as they come quarterback in Derek Carr. And quick trivia game. Let's do this. We did a couple times. Name a Titans cornerback, right?
Christian Fulton.
Okay.
Beyond that, not fair to play with Mike. Yeah, Mike knows everybody.
Mike was like, naming like, the Oilers depth chart from 1986. Like, they had David Edwards as their third stringer. No, but more seriously, it's okay. Anyway. It's a very thin secondary at the cornerback spot specifically. So I just think this is a good matchup. If they can block up front, Derek Carr should have plenty of opportunity to crush with Chris Olave on Sunday.
If this is a soft secondary, then is there any chance that you would look at Michael Thomas as a potential flex play, or do you want to see it before you trust it, Mike?
I'd play him. I have him wide receiver 31. The good thing is last year in a similar spot, I know he missed another huge chunk of a year, but in a similar spot coming off all the missed time, he was really good out of the gate. He was wide receiver 2, scored, 3 touchdowns the first 2 games, saw a lot of targets. He's the one that wanted to stick around, wanted to bring in Derek Carr. There's a lot of reasons for positivity here. I'm at 31. I think he's a fringe wide receiver 3.
Jamal Williams, a sneaky, incredibly valuable play in week 1, as not only is Alvin Kamara suspended, but Kendre Miller has been banged up. He seems to be a bit iffy to play on Sunday. Who would be the next person up in this backfield, Mike?
Converted wide receiver Kirk Merrick or Taysom Hill.
Go. Yeah,
Taysom Hill fill in for Mark Ingram last year.
It'll be interesting to see if they list Taysom Hill as their third quarterback for roster purposes on Sunday with those new third quarterback rules. But yeah,
it's not a quarterback.
Thin backfield right now for New Orleans, which suggests that Jamal Williams should be very, very busy on Sunday. Not counting on a lot in the passing game, but he could have 22 carries on Sunday. Would not surprise me at all. Titans' run defense is legit, though.
Yes, they are a very good run defense. Yes. I'm excited to see the way that they're going to use Jamal Williams. Mama Dopp specifically cannot stop talking about how much she loves Jamal Williams. Doesn't make a difference that he's in New Orleans. She's a Jamal Williams
Lion
fan.
forever. Low-end RB2.
All right. Field Yates, Mike Clay, Daniel Dopp here on Fantasy Focus, making our way through the Week 1 preview. Now we are on to Denver. And we're talking about Russell Wilson here. Is this potential? Are you looking at Russell Wilson without Jerry Jeudy? He's going to have Cortland Sutton here under center as his main wide receiver.
Right? He's back at practice.
Sounds iffy, but
sounds more positive.
I'm planning on Jeudy not playing. But when you look at this situation, when you look at
Jeudy on duty,
is Russell a guy that you could use as a streamer here in Week 1? You don't really need streamers in Week 1. So like, what's the case for starting Russell Wilson?
It would have to be probably a scenario where I'm trying to think who would it be like. Somebody who just like took the bait on Aaron Rodgers this offseason and said, I'm gonna bounce back with Aaron Rodgers as he bounces back from a terrible season last year, but doesn't want to have him in their lineup against the Bills. Probably something like that.
If you took both Anthony Richardson and like you waited at quarterback and maybe you have Russell Wilson, you say, hey, I want to start someone else.
I think I'd roll the dice on Anthony Richardson if that was if I went Anthony Richardson first with Russ as like my backup option. But which sounds weird because I have Russ ranked a couple of spots higher. It's like a little bit more of like a floor play here because there were a couple of games where that Broncos offense looked semi-competent last year, and I think at least one of them was against the Raiders. Not very good on defense.
It was, yeah. And he did finish up strong last year. New coaching, obviously, scheme of Sean Payton. There's reasons for optimism. And again, they're playing the Raiders, who, I mean, the only strength spot of that defense.
Raiders. Yeah,
that's it. Nailed it. The only real strength spot of that defense was edge rusher, and is Chandler Jones even playing? Like
that would be a no. I mean,
right. So
he might not even be with the team by Sunday.
Yeah. I mean, and they took Tyree Wilson early, but he missed a lot of time as well. So it's Max Crosby and
which is, by the way, that might be enough.
That's a good point, actually.
Yeah, Max Crosby might be enough by himself, but yeah, it's I'm not sure that there is a single player that is considered like standout besides Crosby on that defense. So it should be a good day for Russ. I've got him as quarterback 13. You guys are both a little bit higher than me. Cortland Sutton, wide receiver 23 for me this week with the idea that Jerry Jeudy does not play. I think Javonte Williams, I have absolutely no idea what to expect other than the fact that he will play. I've got him as running back 21, but if you told me that he played 37% of the snaps on Sunday and Samaje Perine played 52, I would be like, all right, that checks out.
And if you said the opposite, then I would think that's crazy either. If
I'm hopeful, but I'm not necessarily confident.
Yeah, I'd rather have both of those guys on my bench until we see how it sorts out this week. But it is a good matchup, and it sounds like Javonte's going to play a role. Look where we ranked him. I mean, you're actually highest at 21. He's at least in the RB2 conversation, certainly at least a flex flyer.
I'm a mile high on him.
Oh, I see what you did there. Is it because they're playing the Raiders
do you think Apple like has to consider reclassifying us as a comedy podcast?
I think
you can filter. Probably not.
Probably not.
Sure. Sure.
Okay. No one would understand the joke. They'd be like, these guys are not funny. That'd be all the comments.
I don't know. I think you guys are. Maybe I understand comedy nuance and you guys don't. And
maybe that's what it is.
Yeah. And you use props. Like
the microphone.
Like
you did the microphone. Yeah, you are.
That was a Kadarius Toney joke. It was funny.
Straight up thespian.
That was good. I mean, I liked it. Yeah, for like a half second, I didn't know what was happening. So you had me. You had me going for a second. I was like, why did he just do
Yes, nailed it.
Speaking of having you going for a second, bad segue. How are you approaching these? What What are you doing with these Philadelphia Eagles running backs, guys?
I have no idea where that segue came from, but I'm going to go with it.
Yeah, let's go with it.
I am trying to avoid the Eagles running backs if I can this weekend because this is my favorite depth chart. It's the only depth chart that's ever mattered in the history of the NFL. The Eagles listed their starting running back as Kenneth Gainwell / Boston Scott / DeAndre Swift / Rashad Penny.
Stop it. They did not.
They, 4 players.
I think they included Trey Sermon in parentheses too, just for fun, just to mess with us. Right?
He literally can't play on Sunday, but he might start at the same time. He's on IR. So,
Which one of these ones are you trusting if you're going to throw them in your fantasy lineup? The answer is
that's a no from me, dog.
Yeah, I'm not going to put any of them in my fantasy lineup.
Nope. If I had to pick, it would be DeAndre Swift, but I don't. I'm with you guys. They're going to use them all. They actually are going to rotate all these guys.
All 4 of those guys. Yes, totally. And I think that you have to at some point decide what you're looking for out of an Eagles back. If you're looking for the guy that has the chance to rush the ball 12 times for 48 yards and a touchdown, then you are drafting or you are playing Rashad Penny. Oh. Yeah. If you're looking for the running back who might be able to get you between 4 and 5 catches a week, it's either DeAndre Swift or Kenneth Gainwell. If you are looking for a running back that is going to score touchdowns, but only in games against the Giants, draft Boston Scott. So yes, I would avoid if I could. Yeah,
that's it.
All right, they are not playing the Giants on Sunday.
We got one more running back we're going to talk about here within this segment, and that is Alexander Mattison as the starter for the Minnesota Vikings Week 1.
He's the new man on the Minnesota Vikings.
Man, you're on fire right now.
I am.
Dalvin Cook no longer
there.
there.
Listen to the show.
I doubt she listens to the show. I doubt it. But I love Alexander Mattison. I drafted him as a low-end RB2 all draft season. Mike, does that mean that I'm good to just put him in my starting lineup here in Week 1?
Yeah, but RB16 going at home against the Bucs, the team we
have a pretty good rush defense.
Their defense is fine on paper. I think it's borderline. We'll say 12th, maybe best defense on paper.
I worry about
this year.
them losing their edge without Tom Brady on the other side. I just like the gravitas of this defense is a little different compared to where it was last year.
I think that's where a lot of their talent is, though, on that side of the ball, which could help out. So that's fine, but it is in Minnesota. We expect Madison to basically slide into Dalvin Cook's role, and that was a role that made him a fringe RB1 for most of last season. So, I have RB16 for Madison. I think he'll be serviceable. Maybe not the most exciting play, but he's going to get volume, push for 20 touches some weeks. He's fine. You start him.
He's not the only guy that we're maybe starting in Minnesota. Obviously, we're starting Justin Jefferson, but Field, you've been all in on Jordan Addison as well this offseason. Are you starting him?
He scored a touchdown. I wrote this in really faint ink. Apparently,
really can't see it.
You have to have.
Wait, this is a meme opportunity. We got to screenshot this. Yes.
Addison touchdown.
Addison touchdown.
That's what it says right there. Yeah. So I'm calling my shot there. Jordan Addison scoring a touchdown Week 1. You heard it here.
Week 1
first. Yeah.
Love it. All right, Field Jays, Mike Clay, Daniel Dopp here on Fantasy Focus, making our way through the Week 1 lineup. We're talking about the Commanders here. Sam Howell under center, Mike.
I'm I'm waiting for the next segue. Where's your next good segue?
I save them. I save them.
I'll try to come up with
You want to come up with a good one?
I'll see if I can fit one in.
All right. Well, we've got Terry McLaurin with the Commanders, was dealing with a turf toe injury.
Yeah,
Sounds like
here.
he is going to play in Week 1, which is something we really like to hear.
Upgraded to full participation in practice on Thursday. We'll check out, obviously, the Friday report, but
Hopefully
assuming it stays at full, then he should be good to go on Sunday, which is great news, and perhaps a bit of a draft discount. I saw McLaurin slide a little bit over the past couple of weeks in drafts because people were wary about him missing a game or two, and because of all the depth at wide receiver, it is justifiable, right? It's not like you're bypassing Terry McLaurin for some geek off the street. It's like, do I take Chris Godwin instead? Totally explainable pick over somebody like McLaurin if he was going to miss a couple of games. He's good to go. I actually have both of these wide receivers as top 30 plays this weekend.
Yeah. Speaking of horses wearing top hats, like Jahan Dotson, I think is a guy you want to.
I love you.
Fight.
That was so good. No. That was close. That was close. Yeah,
that was good, right?
Yeah.
Did I nail that?
Definitely.
Is that what you were talking about?
Definitely a comedy podcast now. If it wasn't before,
now we are.
You know that because no one laughed at all when I said that.
Equestrian podcast. We're just checking all the boxes.
Nailed it.
Yeah.
I'm with you, McLaurin. If he starts, you're always starting him. Jahan Dotson, good matchup as well. It's gonna be a vertical threat. Touchdowns will come down from last season. He was way over his head, led all receivers in touchdown rate, but love the matchup against Arizona's corners here. So, starting both guys.
Honestly, Bills, I was going to move ahead. Horses wearing top hats would be one of the funniest things that I think I could see. If I could ride a horse wearing a top hat, that would be amazing.
Good name for a band, too.
Oh, my gosh. What a good, crappy band name, Mike Clay.
I used to use the top hat as my piece in Monopoly often.
Are you serious?
That's why Daniel didn't laugh. He was like, oh, yeah, I've seen that band. That's not funny.
He's like,
Watch
watch them last
month.
month.
I'm seeing them in October.
Come on. All right, let's talk about the Bills here. We have been talking about getting one running back. Can we just get one fantasy viable running back from these Buffalo Bills so that we can start them in fantasy? There's one guy that we have been excited about, Mike Clay, and that has been James Cook. Is this a situation where you can start James Cook here week 1 as a potential starting running back?
I think so, because we talked about offseason hype and vibes and all that, and they're very good with James Cook. Now, I know Damian Harris missed a lot of time with injury, but Latavius Murray was hanging around, plays a similar role to Damian Harris. Obviously, Naheem Hines, unfortunately, won't be there this season. It just opens up a lot of room for Cook to be the clear guy. Now, I only have him projected for 14 touches. A little conservatively, he's going up against a good Jets defense, but that's enough for RB23. If you drafted him and you took a shot on him, this might be one of the better values in fantasy this year. Remember, he was a second-round pick last year. He's in a really good offense. If he makes the leap this season, Cook could end up being in that short list of fantasy MVP candidates. There's a real chance he is a big breakout.
James Dalvin Cook versus Dalvin James Cook on Monday night. I just want to get that out there because it's going to be talked about a ton, obviously, over the next 3 days. So shout out the Cooks. I can't wait to see this Aaron Rodgers-led Jets team, but a reminder, I've talked about a couple of days ago, fading Aaron Rodgers. He's quarterback 16 on my board after Patrick Mahomes was removed last night.
So when looking at these Bills, I'm starting Josh Allen, starting Stephon Diggs, starting James Cook. There's really only 2 other guys on this roster that I would think about, and that'd probably be Gabe Davis and Dalton Kincaid.
Sure.
You rolling the dice on either one of them here against the Jets on Monday Night Football?
I would make a Kincaid consideration if I went very, very, very patiently at that tight end spot. But I think most people probably ended up drafting a starter ahead of Dalton.
I'm with you. Just real quick, Gabe Davis, who's the best wide or cornerback duo in the NFL right now? It might be Sauce Gardner and DJ Reed. They play on the perimeter. They don't go in the slot. Gabe Davis last year lined up on the perimeter 90% of the time. His 2 stat lines against the Jets: 2 catches for 33 yards, 3 catches for 31 yards, no touchdowns. Josh Allen wasn't very productive. It was consistent. I mean, if you're looking for a solid 4 points, he's your guy. If you just need 4, and maybe actually Monday Night Football, you might be going into
4 points.
Might be like, I need that.
My
4
flex
points.
option, I could get 4 points from Gabe Davis, or if I start Dalvin Cook, what if he fumbles the first carry and they're like, you know what? Breece Hall show the rest of the day.
That's right. That's it. All right, let's move ahead. Talk about the Seahawks. Last year, Geno Smith lit the NFL on fire after not being someone that we could count on from a fantasy perspective for basically the entirety of his career. He was quarterback 5 at the end of the year last season. Field Yates. This year, week 1, he takes on the Los Angeles Rams, the team that Mike Clay has talked about potentially being the worst defense in the NFL. I don't know how else to be more excited about Geno. He is absolutely a starter for me. He could absolutely smash against the Rams here in week 1.
Great offensive line, great receiver trio. Now that Jackson Smith and Jig was now going to play on Sunday. Good backfield, although Kenneth Walker III downgraded to limited in practice on Thursday. Groin injury. Obviously keep a close eye on that one. If he sits, Zach Charbonnet all the way up. But back to Geno. Yes. It's a tasty matchup for a guy who's got great weapons. He was rock solid last year. Now the upside for Geno over the course of this season, I still think is tapped relative to the top 8 or 9 or even 10 options that we have at quarterbacks, but a great spot for those that maybe were concerned about whoever their starting quarterback was. This was the perfect streaming option, the best streaming option for week 1. Geno Smith in a great spot. I am prepared to see what the internet has in store for the Rams if they perform this year. Los Angeles Rams, but they're going to add an extra S to that loss in Los Angeles, and they're just going to have a feast with that this year.
Oh, wow.
Are you mad the Lions don't have their pick this year?
No. Why would I be mad? The Lions don't have the Rams pick this year? Oh, yes. I'm mad that they don't have the Rams pick this year.
Is there a way they can amend that trade and just give us one more?
Just give us another one.
You guys don't even care about first-round picks. Who was the last player the Rams took in the first round?
Who is it? I don't know.
Jared Goff.
Oh, no way.
Oh, my gosh. Are you talking about the Jared Goff who has never once lost to Patrick Mahomes? You're talking about that Jared Goff?
Jared Goff, who has the best record in the NFL this season, has not lost a game. How many other has won every game he's played in? How many other quarterbacks can say that?
MVP favorite so far?
Right now.
A ton. That is a big one. All right. So then within the Seahawks team, you're basically starting everyone. Is that kind of where we're at, Mike? Like against these Rams?
Receivers, yes.
Yeah, Metcalf, Lockett, Ken Walker if he goes, Charbonnet if Walker doesn't go, Geno Smith I like as a streamer. Again, great matchup against the Rams.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. We're going to talk about a little bit more from this week 1 in just a minute. But first, hey, college football fans.
Yes?
Hey, I'm going to let you in on a little secret that will help you win game days this season. It's Eckrich smoked sausage. You're probably asking yourself, could it really be that easy? Well, absolutely it is. Eckrich smoked sausage is crafted with a perfect medley of spices for a truly rich, savory taste. They're delicious, all by themselves or in any recipe you can dream up. If the word recipe sounds like a lot of work, don't worry, it's not. Visit Eckrich.com for dozens of simple mouthwatering recipes, making your tailgating prep a stress-free event. So there you go. Eckrich smoked sausage is a secret to winning game days. You can thank me later. Visit Eckrich.com for more.
All right. Is it lunchtime now?
Continuing on, almost lunchtime. Continuing on.
Did you hear these
Week 1
sickos
preview?
yesterday on the show talking about not eating until 1 o'clock?
What?
They don't eat food until 1 o'clock.
I did catch that while I was eating.
Having lunch at 11:12, right?
Exactly.
Like, yeah.
No, that's
you're normal,
unreal.
and you actually
I
eat
have
before 1
breakfast.
o'clock.
I absolutely have breakfast, and then a snack like a protein bar,
Right.
and then lunch well before 1 o'clock.
Okay, thank
generally,
you. Just making sure.
Yeah, I'm on like third meal of the day by then.
I think
Yeah.
I just broke my earpiece, so I can't hear anything
Again?
right now. Yeah, it happened yesterday.
This happened yesterday.
Broke his mic.
I'm a
I'm
destructive
not
guy.
joking. Stefania and I were on our hands and knees all over this studio trying to find the little piece that came out of Fields' ear. It was unreal.
I
All
don't
right.
know if this is going to get fixed in time for the show to be over, so I'll just pretend like it's fixed, and we
Yeah.
can just, you guys
can
can just
hear
yell.
us now.
If
You
the
don't hear
producer's
whatever we
yelling at
want.
me, you guys can just yell.
That's how this
about
works. He can't hear us.
All right, let's talk about the Titans here.
Had a good run, whatever.
Big debut in Tennessee, Fields, Yates.
Yeah.
We got DeAndre Hopkins coming over. Hopefully the Titans are going to utilize him a fair amount as their number one wide receiver.
Not a lot, but a fair amount, right? Because it is the
Hopefully.
Titans still.
That's right.
I have a question for Mike. You think he draws the Marshawn Lattimore
Yes, I do.
shatter if Lattimore plays?
I do. Lattimore missed most of last season.
Yeah.
He tends to show up for the biggest one-on-one matchup. So if they assign him to Hopkins, which I suspect they will, especially with Treylon Burks being iffy until recently,
Yeah.
I think that's probably going to be the plan. Maybe it hurts the ceiling a little bit, but honestly, Lattimore is so boom bust that I'm not moving the needle much. I'd still start Hopkins with confidence.
Really? Okay, interesting. Yeah, I've got him as the boom bust part was surprising to me. I've got him as wide receiver 22. Just throwing the ball a lot.
Is
A lot.
Is Marshawn Lattimore just not boom bust against Mike Evans? Is that all I'm thinking about?
That's right.
He is.
That's his guy.
He
That's
owns
the
him.
matchup.
Yes.
That
Okay.
is
He
the
owns
matchup
him.
where he really shows up. He definitely has a tendency to just like we're worried about the matchup because he's going to shadow someone and it's just not a big name and it's not,
Yeah.
You see
fine,
that
but-
that story that Mike Evans' agent, I guess there's a deadline of this Saturday to negotiate a deal for Mike Evans.
did see
Marshawn
that.
Lattimore is like, yeah, but I don't know, 50 cents an hour.
Yeah.
I mean, no, that would be a lot actually.
That'd be a bunch.
Wait, probably not actually. That'd be terrible money. Yeah, 50 cents an hour.
Was
Yeah.
he was borderline going viral last night, Evans, or trending because
Oh,
everyone wants him on
Trade
the
to the
Chiefs.
Chiefs.
Oh, I know.
I saw that too.
That was
starting
us.
already.
Remember last year when we traded every running back to the Falcons? Like we were like Josh Jacobs to the Falcons,
Yeah.
baby. Here we go. Kareem Hunt to the Falcons.
Falcons
Here we go
eventually
now.
took care of it themselves in the draft, though.
Yeah,
They did the
yeah,
right
yeah,
thing.
they
the
did.
Chiefs,
They did.
Chiefs might have to trade for a receiver if last night continues. Of
They
course, it may
have
not matter
about
once Kelsey's
7 cents in the cap right now, so they need to just
Chiefs.
get Chris Jones and Travis Kelsey back. What they need.
Touche.
Last thing on the Titans, Treylon Burks, guy that we were excited about potentially coming into his second year. Are you starting him here in week 1, though, Mike?
He's borderline. I think I would rather avoid for this week.
Wait
Again,
and see how it looks.
Yeah, I'm excited for him. I think there's a non-zero chance. We talked about this in the offseason. There's a non-zero chance. He's a number 1 receiver. He was a mid-first round pick last year. You expect the year 2 leap and for him to be the star. I mean, that would be perfect for Tennessee. That's why they drafted him, to be the 1A. And then ideally, Hopkins at this point in his career, maybe, is not maybe the 1B at worst, but
Sure.
there's at least a chance of that. So I'm excited for Burks, but I think especially with the missed time the last month, probably best on your bench for this week.
Derrick Henry always gives you an edge to kind of offset this, but this Saints defensive front could totally feast on this very inexperienced Titans offensive line. Makes me nervous about the Titans passing game this weekend, so I have Burks outside my starting wide receiver range.
Yeah, Titans O-line in my rankings are, and I think everyone would agree with this for the most part, 32nd.
32nd.
32nd ranked
31st?
O-line.
Yeah.
That's a good question. Who is it? Actually,
Arizona?
I don't think they're
have
there.
2 good
The
tackles.
Rams are down there.
Yeah.
Washington's down there. Jacksonville actually is down there.
believe it or not, yeah.
Cam
Yeah.
Robinson suspended.
Yep.
Yep. All right, let's talk about the Green Bay Packers. Mike Clay, Jordan Love, going to get the start under center in the beginning of the Jordan Love era. We'll see how long it lasts. But these Packers are going to look very different with Love rather than Aaron Rodgers. What are your expectations for week 1?
Well, here's my analysis on this. So I got a recent copy of Madden from EA.
yeah.
Okay.
Played it a little bit. I always play a few games before the season starts, and I have some time. And I went through a full season, and Jordan Love was like an MVP candidate, led the NFL in passing yards.
Shut up.
Totally crushed it. Christian Watson had a huge year, so sorry. You're on
be
the wrong
real.
side of that one.
No, you got the wrong
So, I
script.
mean, all in on Love. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, Matt.
You're in love with Love. Was that just your ability to try to brag about how good you are at Madden?
No, I was not the Packers.
Okay.
I got knocked out in the playoffs through a ton of interceptions with Jalen Hurts. It did not go great.
Wow.
It did not go
Okay,
great.
so I will say this. I have had this like gnawing feeling throughout like the past few weeks about wondering whether or not I have given Jordan Love enough praise for his potential. And like part of me wonders like maybe this kid can just freaking sling it. It's going to be really good this year. So now that it's the Friday of week 1, I have gotten that off my chest. And so now I'm accountable if he actually does look great this year. He is not inside my starting quarterback rankings for this week. It should be noted that would also be more precarious if Christian Watson does not play. He's missed 2 straight practice with a hamstring injury. That does not sound good.
Yeah, I'm worried.
Romeo Doubs also injured, but he did return to practice yesterday. Sounds like Dobbs has a pretty good chance of playing, but without Christian Watson, even a good matchup against the Bears, hard to put first-time, full-time starter Jordan Love in your fantasy lineup.
I agree. He should be on benches or waivers at this point. I'm fine. End of the bench. We'll see how he plays. If Christian Watson is out, you're looking for a DFS punt. Jaden Reed is interesting, especially with Dobbs having missed time. If Watson's out, very inexperienced group. He was a second-round pick, and he'll see a lot of targets if Watson's out.
And even with Love under center, we still expect these running backs to continue to kind of be the running backs we saw last year. Aaron Jones looks like a top 10 running back for us, should be utilized in this passing game with the way that he is. And A.J. Dillon probably going to just reclaim that same A.J. Dillon role that he had last year.
He's going to have like way more carries than you actually want him to as Aaron Jones manager. But he's a good player. He's a big part of their offense. And like he does some things pretty darn effectively. He's a good football player.
The only question I have with this backfield, it could very much be status quo to last year. Same thing. Aaron Jones is 28, so maybe a little less, more Dillon.
Yeah.
It's something to think about. I didn't really move the needle much, but they were interested in Jonathan Taylor. That was widely reported. I wonder what that means. If there was if Taylor comes in, that's really bad news for these guys. So what are they thinking?
I thought it was. I would say this. Like my sort of like informed speculation on that was a couple things here. I know this sounds ridiculous. Played Wisconsin, familiar face, right? Like hometown thing. Beyond that, quarterback that you just don't know yet. Still, right? Give him as much stuff around you, and then both. A.J. Dillon, and Aaron Jones is a free agent after this year. A.J. Dillon, same thing. So, like, it's sort of a future planning, even when it might make things complicated for the present.
Yeah, I was wondering if they might send Dillon back in that deal, actually, with the
Would've made
contract
sense.
coming up. So that's something that's interesting. And by the way, the Taylor sweepstakes is not over yet. Someone could still trade for him. So,
it's just on pause for a month because no matter where he gets traded, he can't play until week 5. Yeah.
Does it feel like that's going to pick back up?
I do not think so.
You don't think so? So what do you think, he reports in week 8 or something?
I think it's more like a half season type.
Yeah. Okay. Him and Chris Jones will show up in week 8.
We got one last thing to talk about here, and that is Justin Fields and the Bears after a monster season last year.
Yeah, Bears!
He was unreal with his legs. We've talking about how we want to continue to see him get better with his arm. They added Chase Claypool to this offense last year. At the very end of last year, they obviously added DJ Moore as a part of a draft day trade or just before the draft day trade. Justin Fields, my quarterback 5 for week 1.
Okay.
Field, I don't know. When I think about him, I don't know what else you need to see other than it doesn't make a difference to me. Even if his passing game isn't what I hope it's going to be, he still has the floor built into his game because of his rushing ability.
Yeah, and we're wondering what this Bears offense looks like, similar to what we talked about with the Ravens at the beginning of the show, right? Beyond that, though, Justin Fields in college was an awesome passer. Now, he was throwing to just a bunch of future first-round picks, but still, like, he had 6 passing touchdowns against Clemson in the college football playoff national semifinal. Like, the billing on Justin Fields coming out of college was not elite runner with serviceable throwing. It was elite thrower who had more upside as a runner than he had shown because Ohio State didn't need to run him all that much. So perhaps he reverts back to his college form here, runs enough because he is a great athlete, and then throws to a much improved group of pass catchers. Mike, some questions about the offensive line right now in Chicago still, specifically the interior, but this team on paper looks like easily one of the most improved in the entire league.
Yeah, I think the simple math here is he was already a mid-range QB1 with a high fantasy ceiling last year. A handful of elite games for sure. Remember, he was winning us
Yep. Their number one receiver from last year isn't even on the roster anymore.
Right, and that's where I was going next. So he was already a mid-range QB1 in that situation with a really poor group of pass catchers, and now he's still going to run a lot. That's not going to change. That's part of his DNA, still in his prime. But his pass catchers are substantially better. So how do we move him down from that? I mean, he's a mid-range QB1 at worst from a fantasy perspective. Yeah, you must start.
Dante Pettis was his top wide receiver last year.
Well, I mean, at times. I mean, it was him and Equinemius St. Brown, right? And
I feel like Mooney was hurt.
Cole Kmet finished as like the best fantasy receiving option for him within this offense. Like that shouldn't happen again this year. Although I do like Cole Kmet. Ideally, I'd rather not start him this week if I can help it. There are other guys that I would rather play at that position. But I think it's interesting to be able to see the way that Justin Fields, same way that you talked about with the Lamar Jackson field, how is this going to be different this year? How can we see him take that next step as a passer? Because we know everything that he can do as a runner. I'm excited to see the way that this looks. All right. That's going to do it for us today.
We have something we have to remind people, though, that are listening to this right now. Or watching on the YouTube stream or the Twitter stream.
All right.
We are on TV now, Monday and Fridays. This show is actually the first show that will be on TV, 2 o'clock Eastern time on ESPN2. The Deuce, baby.
Everyone can
Go
see
check
my
it out.
Amazing tan. Look
yes,
at
that's right.
Yes, you are very
I didn't realize how tan I was.
I know.
We're
very dark.
It's nice when you have a huge pool and like.
That's what it is. Yeah.
Thanks for the invite again. But yes, check out this show Mondays and Fridays throughout the season on ESPN, 2 p.m. Eastern time. I get it. You probably already listened to the podcast. We're so grateful for that. Maybe you watched the live stream. But guys, this is a cool moment for this show that when I started here, we were in a radio studio doing stuff with no video. Like, it's been wonderful to see. We have so much support. The support for the fantasy product at ESPN has never been stronger. So we can't wait to see what that looks like on Mondays and Fridays.
There's humble field there. He's like, oh, when I got here, it was just some small thing in a little studio. Now we're on ESPN2.
What a jerk I am.
Yeah, we get it. Now we get it. Yeah,
well, what was it like when you started?
It was in a shed down the street. We weren't even allowed on campus. We were just like in some abandoned warehouse somewhere.
You had to ride a horse with a top hat just to get to
I'm so mad at myself. Should be noted also, speaking of ESPN2, Sunday morning, Fantasy Football Now is back.
I can't wait.
Fantasy Football Now this week specifically. We'll start over on ESPN News. We'll jump over to ESPN2 around 11:30 is the early word here. So make sure you just have your TV remote by you and just be able to toggle back and forth between ESPN News and ESPN2. But 10 a.m. Eastern time. 10 p.m. will be a late start for a show that would like to cover all things fantasy. So, can't wait, though. The crew is back. These two gentlemen, Stefania, of course, Damian Woody. Can't wait for what's ahead.
Also really excited to add our good friend Al Zeidenfeld going to be joining us to do some DFS content on Fantasy Football Now. So really pumped to be able to add that. Anything you guys are looking forward to? Look like just week one in general, like final things before we leave. I mean, I already got what I wanted. I got a Lions dub, you know, what do you need?
So I listened to the show yesterday, which I almost never do if I'm not on because I'm just a busy guy.
I'm proud you did knowing you took the Lions.
But you guys did your fantasy MVP picks for this year and they were all awful. I mean, it's Garrett Wilson. I mean, this was the easiest call. And I'm listening to you guys like, what are they talking about? Garrett Wilson, he's the guy this year. It's gonna happen.
I can't wait for Garrett Wilson to go like 3-21-0 on Monday night. Get locked down by
that's
Tre'Davious
on the first
White.
drive. He's doing that in the first drive against a Tre'Davious White shadow. If you drafted Garrett Wilson, you're gonna be happy this year.
Okay,
very happy. What about you, Field? You get one thing in week one. What is it that you want to come?
Monday Night Football, Jets, Bills on ESPN. Bills win comfortably.
So pumped.
That's right.
That.
You heard me? Yeah. This Bills team is being overlooked right now, my friends. Josh Allen, great train. They lost 3 games by 8 total points last year. I get it. They flamed out in the playoffs, but this Bills team, watch out.
Yikes. All right. That's going to do it for us today. Thank you so much for hanging out with us on Fantasy Focus. Field Yates, at Field Yates on the X, at Mike Clay NFL. My name is at Daniel Dopp on X as well. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. We love you guys. Can't wait to be back in week 2. We will see you guys next week.
Monday. Woohoo.
So do you want me to just write your segues from now on? Should I just do that?
You know what? I just want you to do a little bit of prep before you come to the show.
It's about time Mike does some prep.
I thought I nailed that segue. Honestly. I thought I would just take that. That could be my job now.
Yeah, the segue master. Yeah.